And a touchdown for the Hamilton Tiger Cats.
Hey all, FM Fanny here for another episode of, this is going to be our fantasy episode for the week. So we are going to discuss the starts and sits for plays and who to avoid in week 1. We're going to discuss the fantasy sleepers. Also there was another one that I seen. Was that top? There's one today that I seen that was like top plays. Predictor. Playoff picks. Oh, here we go. So this one's top plays in CFL Fantasy at every position for week 1. So we're going to start with the starts and sits and who to avoid in week 1 for fantasy. So for the Ottawa at Saskatchewan, the Thursday game, they're saying to start AJ Ouellette, running back for Saskatchewan, 12,000. An easier choice would have been Riders pivot Trevor Harris, 13,000, or either the Red Blacks receiving duo Justin Hardy and Eugene Lewis. Hardy for 11.3, Eugene Lewis for 11.4. However, our first recommendation of the season is AJ Ouellette, who is healthy after missing 10 games in the 2024 with injuries. Ottawa's defense will focus on containing the Saskatchewan passing game, but this plays well into utilizing Ouellette, and who should be able to find room between tackles. He will be involved in major passing, so we're feeling 19 to 23 touches for Ouellette, with at least one of those resulting in a major home for the home team. And they're saying, this is Brandon C. Williams, the sit Williams Stanback. Yes, Williams Stanback rushed for 1,175 yards as a member of Lions last year. Thankfully, he didn't see Saskatchewan's run defense weakly, as they made life miserable for him. But in 2 games against the Riders, Stanback rushed for 22 times for 49 yards and a paltry 2.2 yards per carry. Ouch. So that's why they're saying not to play him. For the Toronto and Montreal game, they're saying start Davis Alexander Alouettes, 11,000 salary. He is projected to have 15.5k points, or sorry, 15.5 fantasy points, not k. Yet we feel there's room for more. The Argonauts have their challenges defending the pass last season, losing Royce Medici and Deshaun Amos will leave the secondary vulnerable for Davis Alexander, who should add fantasy points with his running skills. Week 1 always delivers a fantasy performance that serves as a springboard towards a huge season. Davis Alexander is positioned to be one of this year's opening game breakouts. Star Tyson Philpott, 10,500, will be in the lineup, and his game-altering presence will also mean the Owls' other pass catchers will thrive with favorable matchups. Don't be surprised if Alexander pops for 25 fantasy points outing. For the sit, they're saying Toronto running backs. Sometimes it's better to watch the wind than to throw caution into the wind. They're certainly intrigued in how the defending Grey Cups will use their youth movement in backfield with Devontae McMahon at 4,300 and rookie Mayan Williams at 2,500 will share the load. The Argonauts released a pair of 1,000-yard rushers in Kadeem Carey and Kevin Brown, ushering in McMahon and Williams as their top ground pounders. The upside feels unlimited for the new duo. Let's see how Toronto distributes the wealth. Both have the makings of fantasy sleepers, and who will thrive as the season develops. So now we're going to the early game Saturday. They're saying to start Shamar Bridges, a team a year ago this time. Shamar Bridges' fantasy was 2,500. Now, how times have changed. Bridges set franchise record for most patches by first year Tycat 83, which should have easily 1,000 receiving yards. He finished with 933. Had he not missed 3 games. Even with Tim White 12,000, Keandre Smith 8.6k, newcomer Kenny Lawler 8.6k, competing for targets from Bo Levi Mitchell 1,400. Bridges feels like the best play among the Hamilton court, as the over-under suggests that this is not going to be a defensive struggle. So we're seeing Bridges exceed his projection 11.7 fantasy points. He was targeted at least 9 times in 10 games and will pick up where he left off. The salary's a little higher, but the production stays the same. So they're saying to sit both defenses. It says the bottom 2 scoring defenses of 2024 efforts in the offseason to keep opponents from lighting up the scoreboards. But just because they did doesn't mean that they're going to be that they're going to defensive stalwarts in week 1. You're better off paying more for defensive rather than going all in on with your core before realizing isn't enough of salary to go around. When we go to look at a breakdown of each game in fantasy, I'm going to mention my thing about that. So the last game for the starts and sits is going to be the Edmonton at BC. They're saying to start Keon Hatcher Sr., 8,000 for salary. We know that what Justin McInnes can do. We'd love to see Keon Hatcher doing what he did before the knee injury in 2023. Limiting him to just 11 games. Moment. Remember, Hatcher recorded 148 receptions for 2,269 yards and 11 majors in 2022-23. He thrived the starting position pivot, Nathan Rourke, 12,500, when the latter had his steering 2022 campaign just before being injured, and the duo looked sharp during the preseason. Hatcher projected total of 9.5 fantasy points. Looks safe. Let's roll the dice and go with the mindset that he and Rourke will connect on at least one completion of better than 30 yards, with teaming up for a passing major. And they're saying to sit Keon Julian Grant. The Elks 7.1k salary. Another one of the let's be careful out there crowd. Keon Julian Grant is going to torch defenses all season, and he and Trey Ford, 12,000, will become an exciting deep threat pairing. The only reason Julian Grant is here is because we love to see how the Elks passing distribution plays out. Keon Curly Gittins Jr. 9,500 and Stephen Dunbar 8,500 will be the top options for forward-leaving Julian Grant, competing with a handful of youngsters bidding for attention. They say Julian Grant projects 9.5 fantasy points. Saturday, the projection is reasonable. Yet other receivers with lower salaries should be at least equal or outperform them. Sit back and see how this plays out and see if Julian Grant proves him wrong. So that is the sit and starts. So now we are going to go to the 6 CFL Fantasy Sleepers for week 1. So they have Nick Arbuckle, 5,100. That is because Chad Kelly is not playing week 1 due to the injury. It says here, Arbuckle projects for 8.2 points, yet feeling here is that the Argos will have the ball, will have to throw the ball because, 1, the Alouettes contain Toronto's revamped ground game, or 2, Montreal gets out early and forces the Argos to throw more than expected. He's saying we're taking door number 2, and that would work well for fantasy users willing to gamble on Arbuckle. 415 fantasy point outing is a reasonable expectation if you're buying into either of our theories. So the running back, Stephen Scott, and I'm pretty sure Stevie Scott is out, so we will skip past him, so do not play him. Receivers, Jalen Philpott, 6,400 against the Ticats. Points should not be hard to come by in a game where the over-under is 52.5, and take the over. That means Jalen Philpott will be heavily involved in making the debut of new pivot Vernon Adams Jr., 1,400, into an entertaining affair. Philpott's name is among the short list of potential breakout stars for 2025. He's 2 years removed from an injury that could sideline him for an entire season and is coming off a 66 catch campaign. That feels like opening act before a run that will make him a headliner. With a projected 9.6 fantasy points to open the season, and Philpott is poised to exceed that, the road for his first season with over 100 targets begins in a big way. So don't count on his seller being this affordable for long. The next one is Stanley Berryhill III, Lions 2,600. Watch the BC offense is worth staying up late for, even for non-Pacific time folks. With Nathan Rourke 2,500 at the helm, the Lions are hoping that they can keep moving against the Edmonton defense that is ranked in points allowed, or 7th in points allowed in 2024. The combo of Justin McInnes and Keon Hatcher Sr., 8,000, will make share of targets. If you're looking for someone who can produce fantasy points on a limited target share, then look in the direction of Berryhill. So he's projected to get 7.5 fantasy points. The next one is Benjamin Victor Elks. Want to really roll the dice? This play isn't for the faith of the heart, but here's some intriguing surrounding Victor, a former receiver at the Ohio State University. At 6'4", 200 pounds, Victor has the size-speed combo that will conjure flashbacks of another big-body Edmonton pass catcher. He's got a way to go before he can be fairly compared to Duke Williams, but if you get the picture. Okay, so they're saying he's projected to get 3.1, so he's a possible sleeper. We have Brandon O'Leary Orange, Ticats 2,500. Brandon O'Leary Orange had 4 catches for 62 yards in last season's opener before an injury kept him off the field until week 13. 5 of his 16 catches went for at least 25 yards, including a 71-yard reception in week 18 against his former Bomber teammates, finding targets in a receiving corps filled to the top shelf. Talent will be challenging for O'Leary Orange, who's projected to get 8 fantasy points in week 1. So that is, it says here, that said, Calgary secondary, it can't cover everyone, so this door opens. So this opens the door for Larry Orange to be a low salary fantasy standout. There's a 12 to 14 fantasy point upside here, or upside waiting here. So that is the sleepers. These I think I already did. Yeah, those I already did. Top plays. So these are the top plays in every CFL fantasy at every position for week 1. This is basically the top projected fantasy points for the top, top 5 of every position. We have Boy Levi Mitchell Hamilton, 14,000, projected at 18.3. Fantasy points, Vernon Adams, Calgary, 14,000, projected at 18.2. Travis Harris, Saskatchewan, 13,000, projected at 18.2. Nathan Rourke, 12,500, BC, projected at 15.5. I'm rounding up the quarterbacks. Trey Ford, 12,000, projected at 12.5 fantasy points. Running backs, number 1, we have James Butler, 12,300, 15 fantasy points. Greg Bell, 7,700, 18.2 fantasy points. AJ Ouellette, Saskatchewan, 12.9 fantasy points projected. Diedrich Mills, Calgary, 10.5 thousand for salary, 11.7 fantasy points. And Justin Rankin, Edmonton, 7.5 salary, 12.4 fantasy points. With receivers, we have Eugene Lewis, 11.4, projected 17.8. Tim White, 12,000, projected 14 fantasy points. Tyson Philpont, Montreal, 10,500 salary, projected at 17.2. Justin McInnes, BC, 13.500 for salary, 15.5 for fantasy points. And then Kenny Lawler, Hamilton, 8.6. And we have 14 fantasy points projected. Continuing on with receivers, Keyshawn Johnson, Saskatchewan, 3.3, projected 10.1 fantasy points. Samuel Emlis, Saskatchewan, 10.8. 100 salary, projected 13.5. Justin Hardy, the only it says here, Ottawa, 11.300, 16 fantasy points. Reggie Bagleton, Calgary, 11,600, 12.4 fantasy points. Cale Lee Templeton, I apologize if I butcher that first name. Ottawa, 8,000, projected 17.4 fantasy points. Defenses, Saskatchewan's number 1, 8,400, projected 7.4 fantasy points. Montreal, 9.8 thousand for salary, 7.4. BC 8.5 for salary, 5.2 for fantasy points. And then Ottawa 7.1, 4.5 fantasy points, and Toronto 8.4, 6.8 fantasy points. So then that means they're saying do not play Hamilton, Calgary, Winnipeg, or Edmonton. Wait. Hamilton, Calgary, Edmonton, Winnipeg. Not to play those. So we are going to go look at fantasy. We are going to break down each team. So we are going to go start with Thursday's game. We're going to go Ottawa Redblacks first. So Eugene Lewis, 11.4, projected 17.9. Pembleton, 9,000, 7.4. Justin Hardy, 11.3, projected 16 points. Drew Brown, quarterback, 10.7, projected at 14.4. Braylon Addison, 9.0, projected 13.9. William Stanback, 12.1, projected 11.6. Matt Schultz, backup, 5.4, projected at 7.5. Ottawa defense, 7.1K, projected 4.5. And then Dedman, 2.5, projected 3.1. Kalen White, 6.5, projected 3.1. We have Marco Dubois, 3.3, projected at 3.0. Daniel Adnaboye, 3.2, projected 2.6. And then we have Anthony Glosson, running back. Salary is 3.3, projected 1.4. And then Trey Adams is the fourth quarterback and not even projected. We are then going to go to Saskatchewan. Go to the top. Trevor Harris, 13.0, projected 8.2 or 18.2. Keon Schaefer Baker, 9.1 for salary, okay, projected 13.7. Samuel Emilus, his salary is 10.8K, projected 13.5. AJ Olette, 12K, projected at 12.9. And Dante Myers, his salary is 2.5, projected at 10.3. Keyshawn Johnson, 3.3, projected at 10.1. We have Picton, 3.8 for 8.1 points projected. Saskatchewan Roughriders, we have 8.4, 7.4 points projected. Duncan Busby, 2.5, 6.4 projection. Jake Mayer, sorry about that for coughing on the mic, 5.5 salary, 5.0 points projected. And then Hugh Don is 2.5, 4.8 projection. So that is Saskatchewan. We're going to go with the road team. That's going to be Toronto. We are going to start at the top. Chad Kelly is not playing, so we won't worry about him. Urjimala, 6.7, projected at 10.0. We have DeMonte Coxey, 10.0, projection 9.7. Nick Arbuckle, 5.1, projected 8.2. Sean Brissett, salary 7.4, projected 8.0. Devarius Daniels, 8.0 for salary, 7.9 for fantasy points projected. Dante Mahan, 4.3 for salary, 7.7 for fantasy point projection. Then we have Jake Hirschlow, 2.5 for salary, 7.7 for projection points. Toronto Argonauts defense, 8.4 for fantasy, 6.8 for defense. David Unger III, 5.9 for salary, 6.7 for fantasy points. Kevin Mattal, 6.5 for fantasy points, 4.7, or sorry, 6.5 for salary, 4.7 for projection points. Janarian Grant's out this week, so we won't worry about that. Jarek Doge, 5.0, he'll get 0.40, so he is their short yardage. And then you have Leon Williams, who is the backup running back, 2.5. He has yet no projection points. And either does Tucker Horn, as he's the third string, and Derek Skywalker, who is wide receiver and defense. So he plays both ways. Let's switch to the home team. We are going to go with Montreal Alouettes. Tyson Philippont, top of the board, 10.5 for salary, 17.2. Davis Alexander, 11.0 for salary, 15.1. Austin Mack. We have 11.2, 9.7 for salary. Full Speaker, 7.7, 10.6 projection. Tyler Sneed, 6.8 salary, 8.7 projection. We have Charleston Rambo, 4.3 for salary, 8.6 for projection. Montreal, 9.8 for salary, 7.4. Sean Thomas Erlington, 2.6, 7.0 for fantasy point projection. Caleb Evans, who is the short yardage quarterback, 5.5 for salary, 6.8 for projection. Scott third is out. Bethel Thompson, who's the backup, 7.5. And he will have a projection of 5.0 for points. And that is pretty much it for Montreal. We're going to start with the early game on Saturday. So we're going to start with the away Ticats, yours truly. We have Bo Levi Mitchell, 14.0 for salary, projected 18.3. Greg Bell, 7.7, 18.2 for points. Tim White, 12.0 for salary, 14.0 for points. Kenny Lawler, 8.6 for salary, projection 14.0 for points. DeAndre Smith, 19.6 for salary, 12.5 for fantasy points. Jamar Bridges, 10.5 for salary, 11.7 for points. Brendan O'Leary Orange, 2.5 for salary, 8.0 for points. Drew Wolotarski, he's 50-50 to play. He hasn't practiced all week, so I won't go over him. Taylor Powell is backup quarterback, 6.4 salary, 5.8 fantasy points. Giovanni Robinson, 2.5 salary, 5.6 projection points. Short yardage and fullback. Entre Milinovic Litre, 3.8, 5.3 projection points. And then the Ticat defense is 5.7 for salary, projection 4.6. Johnny Augustine, who's the backup running back, 3.7, projection 2.9. So that is it for Hamilton. We're gonna go over to Calgary. They have Vernon Adams, 14.0 for salary, 18.2 for projection points. Reggie Bagleton is 11.6, 12.0 projection score points. Cedric Mills, 10.5K for salary, 11.7 for points. Kevin Jones, 8.6. 8.1 for salary, 10.2 for projection. For fantasy points, Dominique Rhymes, 9.8 for salary, 9.6 for projections scored. Jalen Philpott, 6.4 for salary, 9.6 for projection score. Clark Barnes, 6.2, projected 8.0. PJ Walker is the backup quarterback, 5.0, projection score 5.3. Blake Henry still injured. Calgary Stampeders defense is 6.6, projected 4.0. The backup running back, Jeshurun Antwi, 2.5, projection score 1.8. We are going to go with the Edmonton Elks, who have Trey Ford leading the way at 12.0 for salary, 12.5 for projection. Rankin, we're going to do 7.5 for salary, 12.4 for our projection. Javon Leake, 8.5. Projection is 12.0. Stephen Dunbar is 8.5 for salary, 11.8 for projection. Curly Gittins Jr. is 9.5, projection 11.1. Julian Grant is 7.1, projection 9.41. Cody Fajardo, backup 7.5 for salary, projection score 7.5. Zach Mathis, receiver 2.5 for salary, 7.4 for projection. Arkell Smith, 2.5 salary, 6.8 for projection score. We have Edmonton Elks defense, 8.0 salary, so 8,000K salary, projection score 4.3. And that is pretty much for that. We go to the last team, BC Lions. We have Justin McInnes, 13.5 for salary, 15.5 for projection points. Nathan Rourke, 12.5, projection 15.5 for points. James Butler, 12.3 for projection, 15.0 for points. Keon Hatcher, 8.0 for salary, 9.5 for fantasy point projection. We have Aiden Eberhardt. We have 5.6K, 7.9 fantasy points. We have Stanley Berryhart III, 2.6 and 7.9 projection score. Javon Katoy, 5.9 thousand fantasy points, 7.9 for fantasy points, 5.9 for salary. Jeremiah Mazzoli, backup, 7.4 for salary, 7.0 for fantasy points. BC Lions, 8.5 salary, 5.8 for fantasy points. We have Jermaine Jackson, wide receiver, 2.5 for salary, 3.1. And that's it for BC. So the reason why I was talking about defense is because defenses, you're going to get anywhere from 0 and above. I rather pay for the bottom defense, because that bottom defense may allow me to upgrade to another upgrade and get more points at another position. So I always down price that defense, because not that very often are you going to downgrade the defense. So I'm always downgrading at defense so that I can upgrade at other positions and a chance of getting more points. But that is the 30-minute fantasy video for this week. Sunday we will come back And we will look over the numbers, see how well we did with our picks, and see where we could have done better, where we can improve. And I do appreciate everyone for stopping by. This is Rick from Tycat Stock Network, and have yourself a great rest of your day.